3. I/AT Ellis, the third interstellar object ever detected by humanity, was supposed to be a brief encounter, a cosmic flyby at high velocity, gone before we could point half our instruments at it. It should have passed Mars like a bullet. That's what celestial mechanics predicted. That's what every model confirmed. And then it stopped, not slowed, not deflected, stopped. If you're still watching, subscribe now. You crave more than answers. You seek what lies beyond. Subscribe now and be part of the few who never stop searching. From tens of kilometers per second down to orbital capture velocity, all without visible propulsion, without thermal signatures, without any of the violent deceleration expected from an object obeying known physics, no impact, no collision, just precision. It took a parking orbit around Mars, equatorial, stable, within 5 meters of calculated synchronization per revolution. That was the first sign. Then came the signals, not noise, not background radiation, structured, pulse sequences of prime numbers, fractal logic, Fibonacci spiral encoded in modulation bands, the language of mathematics, stripped of culture, stripped of origin, universal by design, and buried in the signal, images, star systems, exoplanets, one unmistakably Earth, not vague or artistic, rendered in detail, polar ice caps, atmospheric composition, human cities, military installations, observatories, old, archived, decades of surveillance collapsed into one transmission. It had been watching us, long before it arrived. On the surface of Mars, satellites caught it scanning, directing narrow-beam radar into the crust. Not random sweeps targeted zones of astrobiological interest, known aquifers, subsurface ice layers, past rover landing sites. Then it dropped modules, 5, each the size of a small drone, smooth-bodied, with no visible thrusters. They fell without parachutes and disappeared mid-descent. No impact sites, no wreckage, no return, gone. Optical camouflage, phased shielding, or something we don't even have language for yet. Speculation exploded. Some called it a relic, ancient, autonomous, still running its mission on loop. Others said it was a scout, sent to prepare for contact or something worse. A few believed it was archaeological in nature, searching not for us, but for remnants of something it lost long ago. NASA stayed quiet, so did the ESA. But the mobilization wasn't subtle. Defense satellites repositioned. Air forces issued restricted flight corridors. Communication arrays were retasked. Quiet chaos behind diplomatic smiles. And now it's moving again. Trajectory shift earthbound. Its engines, or whatever moves it, activated without heat, without light, only detectable by subtle gravitational wakes and flickers in electromagnetic bands. No exhaust, no ion trails, just silent motion. The path is deliberate, predictable, straight to Earth orbit. Nobody knows what happens next. It could be contact. It could be observation. It could be something we're not ready to name. But this is no longer a story about a comet. This is a controlled intelligent object, carrying maps of our world, responding to our messages, defying our physics, and heading directly toward the only planet it rendered in detail. The age of human isolation is over, and something far older, far more advanced is already on approach. Interstellar objects don't break, they don't decelerate, they don't enter orbit. But this one did. 3I/AT Ellis, once moving at speeds that should have carried it past our solar system forever, slowed down, not gradually, not haphazardly, deliberately. And then it did something no interstellar body in recorded history has ever done. It stopped. The trajectory bent against expectation. The object executed a maneuver that defied Newtonian motion, gliding silently into orbit around Mars with precision. No thermal spike, no visible thrust signature, no radiation plume, just raw movement, silent, cold, and controlled. NASA flagged it immediately. Not because of the orbit itself, but because of how it happened. Zero thermal discharge. No reaction force. Velocity shift without heat. That isn't a comet. That's technology. Engineers compared the deceleration to near-perfect energy efficiency. Theoretical exhaust velocities pointed to systems operating at 10% the speed of light. If there even was exhaust, whatever moved 3I/AT Ellis, It didn't obey anything known. No ion plume, no nuclear flash, no known physics, and the object didn't just stop. It began. Almost immediately, a series of electromagnetic pulses were emitted from the main body, structured, sequential, repeated. These weren't emissions from solar interference or charged dust. They were clean, predictable, consistent, and then the scanning began. Mars became the subject. The object focused emissions on regions long studied by Earth-based scientists, subsurface ice deposits, ancient lakebeds, sedimentary basins, areas of geological interest lit up under intense high-frequency probing, radar scans, deep penetration beams, directed fields of unknown frequency, not random, but focused, not a passive flyby, but a systematic survey. It didn't stop there. Within 72 hours of orbital insertion, 3 I/AT-LS deployed modules, small, fast, untraceable. One moment, they were visible. The next they vanished. No thermal trail, no radar reflection, no optical signature. It was as if they activated some form of optical cloaking or achieved phase masking beyond known detection. Not one of the modules reappeared. Not one sent a signal that could be intercepted, and yet movement on the Martian surface coincided with their deployment. Surface dust shifted, static fields surged, and beneath the southern polar ice cap, seismic monitors, left behind by past rovers, registered localized tremors. These weren't natural. These were intrusions. As this unfolded, attempts to communicate with the Atlas escalated. SETIT, NASA, ESA, all coordinated efforts to transmit basic signals, prime numbers, Fibonacci sequences, hydrogen maps, binary representations of the solar system. The Atlas responded. A series of return transmissions came back across multiple wavelengths, mathematical structures that evolved over time. At first they matched human output, then they expanded. Fractal equations, recursive loops, higher dimensional representations. One burst contained what can only be described as a rotating 4D structure embedded within a time-based modulation pattern. Not just signal, not just message, comprehension. Embedded in the carrier wave was a star map. Not of our galaxy, not of local space, but of a stellar formation located over 800 light-years away, precise, labeled, and layered with gravitational vectoring not present in Earth's mapping systems. Alongside that map, Earth, a composite projection, topography, political borders, biosignatures. Not a snapshot, a study. Military installations, deep space listening posts, research centers. The image was recent. The perspective, high altitude. The implication, it had been watching long before it arrived. This was not a first encounter, this was a report. The object's behavior, once seen as exploratory, shifted under the weight of this data. The scans of Mars, strategic. The modules, purposeful. The transmissions, intentional. Now the debate turned. Was this a probe, a scout, a remnant, or was it a warning? Global response accelerated. Intelligence communities worldwide shifted to crisis posture. Emergency task forces were established. Some focused on diplomacy, what to say if contact escalated. Others focused on defense, how to respond if the object turned hostile. Because one thing had become clear. 3 I/AT-LS wasn't just in orbit, it was preparing to leave. And its next vector, Earth. Telemetry confirmed the subtle trajectory shift again, smooth and intentional. The object began aligning with Earth's orbital path, not in a free fall, not in a gravity sling, but as if plotting a course, a straight shot. Militaries initiated protocol reviews. Space Command operations elevated readiness levels. Satellites pivoted. Quiet briefings flowed from space agencies to heads of state. No alarms were sounded. But the world was now holding its breath. No one could say for sure what the object wanted. Theories spiraled. One group argued it was archaeological, searching for traces of its own kind. Maybe Mars held ruins. Maybe Earth did. Maybe this wasn't a new visit, but a return. Another group feared something else, that the Atlas was not here to explore, but to assess, to observe and report. A forward element. A probe, a scout for a civilization capable of manipulating gravitational forces, transmitting through universal constants, and bypassing the time barriers of space. In either case, exploration or surveillance, the conclusion was the same. Earth had been noticed. The final communications from the object included more than numbers. Within one burst, decoded frames revealed abstract shapes morphing into recognizable forms, water molecules, carbon chains. Then, unmistakably, DNA spirals, not just knowledge. Recognition. They knew what we were. They knew how we functioned. They understood our biology. Whatever the Atlas was, whatever sent it, had studied us in full. And it was now moving on to the next phase. Whether that meant contact, conflict, or something in between, no one could say. But Mars had been the staging ground. And Earth was next. The implications rocked the scientific community. Everything, physics, astronomy, biology, stood on the edge of obsolescence. We were no longer writing theories. We were now decoding a message written in another civilization's terms. Technology that could alter the fundamentals of propulsion, energy manipulation at scales previously thought impossible, communications through spatial harmonics, object concealment, without detectable mass shift, and all of it, every last trace, wrapped around the actions of a single object. It wasn't large. It wasn't aggressive. It didn't need to be. The power it represented was enough. Enough to collapse every assumption humanity had about its place in the universe. Enough to redraw the border between science and myth, because this was not natural, not coincidental, not random. It was planned, executed, delivered. Mars was the first step. Earth is the next, and the message was simple. We know you're here. We know what you've built, what you're capable of, what you dream of. We've seen your wars, your transmissions, your sensors, your weapons. We are watching. The countdown now begins. As the Atlas completes its orbit and aligns with Earth's approach vector, one question remains. What does it want? We don't know. Not yet. But the clock is ticking. And silence, true silence, is no longer an option. The stars are no longer silent. The void is no longer empty. We are no longer alone. What comes next could define the next 100 years of human existence, or end it entirely. You are living through the single most significant moment in humanity's history, and it has already begun. Stay informed. Subscribe now. This is no longer science fiction. This is the arrival. And you need to be ready. The Earth has never been still, but now the silence feels different, because 3I/AT Ellis is coming. Its velocity is stable, trajectory locked, and every single movement it makes is deliberate. No planetary slingshot, no gravitational drift, just controlled momentum, aligned, focused. A course correction so precise it forced every major space agency to double-check their own math. Because nothing moves like this unless it wants to. And this object wants to move toward Earth. It left Mars behind without a trace. No orbiting debris. No fading signal. The modules it released never re-emerged. Whatever was down there, it got what it came for. The data shows a final transmission burst before departure. One pulse, short, direct, packed with an encryption pattern that broke 2 decoding algorithms before one finally cracked it. Inside 4 images. The first, an Earth-Moon system, viewed from high orbit. The second, a diagram of hydrogen decay, referencing the same isotopes used in deep space propulsion. The third, an unfamiliar symbol, geometric, circular, encoded in 4 repeating orientations. And the fourth, a countdown. No numbers, just pulses, recurring at fixed intervals. Each interval precisely calibrated to Earth's sidereal rotation. Every 18 hours, the pulse repeats. And every time, the signal strengthens. It's no longer just coming from the object. Now it's echoing off satellites, reflecting in Lagrange point receivers, rebounding in ground-based systems. The signal is tunneling through the solar system like it knows the architecture. It doesn't need to ask where Earth is. It already knows. Governments are watching. They aren't talking. Classified teams have taken over every major deep space observatory. Data that was once shared freely is now compartmentalized, controlled, rerouted through encrypted military networks. What you're hearing in public, that's a shadow of what they're seeing, because the truth is too large to contain, and it's accelerating. Private aerospace firms have already redirected satellite constellations to monitor the object. One orbital platform even detected a brief field distortion, likely gravitational, passing across its sensors moments before the Atlas aligned with Earth's orbit. Distortion, not from propulsion, not from exhaust, from mass manipulation. That alone is enough to rewrite every rule in known physics. Something out there is moving not through gravity, but with it, harnessing the curvature of space, folding motion into function, and doing so with such subtlety, it's almost undetectable, except by the precision of machines designed to track millimeter drift across thousands of kilometers. That level of control means only one thing. This isn't exploration. This is intent. The Atlas isn't wandering. It's navigating. And that raises the most terrifying question of all. To where? And for what? Scientists are still parsing the full scope of the signals, but what's known now is this. Earth was identified in the star map it transmitted, not vaguely, not generically, precisely. Longitude, latitude, altitude. From space, it has been watching us. For how long? Unknown. Some say decades, others say centuries. A few suggest it's been watching since long before we had the ability to notice. That would explain the precision, the silence, the ease with which it entered Mars' orbit, as if it had rehearsed. And now, as it glides inward, Earth is left confronting a single inescapable reality. We have been studied. The images transmitted in the signal weren't just of landscapes, they were detailed surveys, specific to our infrastructure, power grids, defense systems, atmospheric patterns, biosignatures. And that's where things get darker, because buried in the noise, hidden in the frequency spread, were patterns matching early human communication systems. Morse, telegraph, binary ASCII representations, not exact replications, echoes. It had been listening, and it was responding, but not in our language, in something universal, mathematics, chemistry, astrophysics, the things that can't be lost in translation. The signal didn't ask a question, it made a statement, a layered calculated declaration. We know you, we understand you, we've mapped your planet, we've heard your signals, and now, we're arriving. It's no longer a question of if contact will happen, it's a question of how we survive it. Nations are split. Some believe this is an opportunity, an invitation to join a cosmic dialogue. Others see it as reconnaissance, the first phase of something far more dangerous. You don't scan a planet, deploy modules, and transmit military site coordinates just for curiosity. You do it because you're preparing for interaction, for reclamation, for occupation. We don't know which, but the tension is rising. Private industry, spurred by defense contracts and silent government directives, has begun developing fail-safes, signal jammers, EM disruptors, directed energy interceptors, not to destroy the object, but to hide from it. Because if it's watching, if it's listening, then it's assessing, and if it's assessing, then it's scoring. That countdown embedded in the signal may be a clock, it may be a warning, it may be a test, and Earth has no time left to guess. As of the latest telemetry, 3 Ik Celes, IK-LES, is now just beyond the orbit of Earth's moon. Its velocity is unchanged, its emission signatures are stable, but its signal just shifted. The pulse once neutral is now modulating, in rhythm, with Earth's magnetic field. That's not coincidence. That's adaptation. It knows our environment. It knows our frequencies. It knows how to speak in our physics. So now the question becomes, what does it say when it arrives? What happens when something that has crossed interstellar space, observed our biology, mapped our planet, and decoded our electromagnetic spectrum finally enters Earth's atmosphere? Do we greet it? Do we run? Do we hide? Or do we prepare for a kind of confrontation no one ever trained for? This is no longer a scientific mystery. This is the threshold of diplomacy, of fear, of survival. And as Earth braces for the inevitable encounter, two things are certain. First, this object, this intelligence, this force knows exactly what it's doing. And second, no one on this planet is ready for what it does next. 3IK/AK-less has stopped at Mars. It has turned toward Earth. And now, the countdown continues. The clock is ticking, the signal is pulsing, and the world is listening with breath held and weapons idle. For now. But if that signal shifts again, if it begins to modulate in known languages, or activates in sync with global infrastructure, or worse, then the moment of decision will arrive. Because once it speaks in our voice, we have no excuse not to answer. And once we answer, there may be no way to take it back. What was once a silent universe is now staring directly at us, and it's getting closer by the hour. This is not a test. This is the contact event humanity has theorized, feared, hoped for, and it is happening right now. There are no more denials, no more theories to hide behind. The data is overwhelming, and the signals are clear. The object, whatever it truly is not just approaching, it is watching, it is learning, and it is preparing for the next phase. 3IK/AK-less is now within Earth's detection perimeter, not just on screens, not just as a digital echo, it's here, real, physical, in our space, and the countdown continues. Every 18 hours, the pulse repeats, but the waveform has changed again. It now carries low-band harmonics that resonate directly with human-made radio arrays. Not interference, integration. The signal bends around our systems, almost as if it was built to work with our infrastructure. It isn't brute-forcing contact, it's blending in. Satellites report temporary anomalies when the signal passes. Not damage, not failure, just silence. For a fraction of a second, nothing. No transmission, no feedback, no ping, just absence. Like something is slipping in between the layers of communication, pausing time, before stepping back out. This is surgical, this is precise, and that silence is louder than any explosion, because it means it doesn't need violence to assert control. It simply steps through the cracks in our technology, like it's been here before. People on the inside are starting to break. Engineers who've studied the signal for weeks are walking away from their consoles, refusing to speak. Defense contractors are rewriting internal protocols overnight. Scientists are holding back papers, not out of caution, but out of fear, because the implications are now beyond theory. We are not just being contacted, we are being understood. And if it understands us, if it knows how we think, how we communicate, how we prepare for threat, then the next move isn't ours, it's theirs. The Atlas is not broadcasting power, it's broadcasting intelligence. Its silence is not confusion, it's strategy. We keep calling it an object. We need to stop. This is not a comet, not a rock, not a rogue body wandering between stars. This is a device, a construct, a mission with memory and purpose, and that purpose is now unfolding in real time, on our doorstep. As the hours tick forward, the margin for error shrinks. One signal, one shift, one misinterpreted pulse could be the difference between contact and catastrophe. Because whether it came to observe, to recover, to judge, or to trigger something hidden long before us, one thing is certain: it has stopped running, it has started listening, and it's waiting for us to respond. This is no longer a moment for curiosity, it is a moment for history, and whatever happens next will be remembered forever. Subscribe now. Stay aware. This story is not over. The re-contact has not yet begun, and every second matters.